You know, they say you never forget the moment your world shifts beneath your feet. For me, that moment came on a Tuesday afternoon in November, sitting at my own kitchen table with a cup of coffee going cold in my hands. My name is Margaret, Maggie to most folks, and I'm 72 years old. I've lived in the same 3-bedroom colonial in suburban Massachusetts for 47 years now, the kind with a front porch that desperately needs repainting and a maple tree in the yard that drops more leaves than seems physically possible each fall. I raised 3 children in this house. My daughter Claire, my oldest boy Daniel, and my youngest, Michael. Their handprints are still preserved in the concrete slab we poured for the back patio in 1989. Tom, my husband, passed 6 years ago, heart attack, sudden as a door slamming. Since then, it's just been me in these walls full of memories. But let me tell you about that Tuesday. Michael had called that morning. "Mom, I'm coming over around 2. We need to talk." His voice had that serious tone that makes a mother's stomach drop, the same voice he'd used when he told us he was dropping out of college junior year or when his first marriage fell apart. I spent the morning stress baking, which is what I do. By the time Michael's truck pulled into the driveway, I had 2 dozen snickerdoodles cooling on the counter and a coffee cake in the oven. The November wind was already stripping the last leaves from my maple tree, scattering them across the lawn like confetti after a party nobody enjoyed. Michael came in through the kitchen door. Nobody in my family uses the front door, never have, stomping snow off his boots even though there wasn't any yet. Just habit, I suppose. He's 43 now, my baby boy, with gray threading through his dark hair and reading glasses he refuses to admit he needs. "Smells good, Mom," he said, but he didn't smile. I poured us both coffee. We sat at the kitchen table, the same oak table where I'd served thousands of meals, helped with countless homework assignments, and had every important conversation a family can have. The afternoon light came through the window at that slanted autumn angle that always makes me melancholy. "Mom," Michael said, wrapping both hands around his mug, "Jenny and I have been talking. Jenny's his second wife, married 8 years now. She's fine, corporate attorney, very organized, very practical. They have 2 kids, Emma and Josh, 10 and 7. We've been thinking about the future," he continued, "your future specifically." I felt something cold settle in my chest. "Go on. You're getting older. This house is too much for you. The stairs, the yard work, the maintenance, and with Dad gone," he trailed off, took a sip of coffee. "Jenny and I think you should start looking into senior living communities. There's a really nice one about 20 minutes from us. Independent living, activities, medical staff on site." I'd been expecting something, but not this. "Michael, I'm 72, not 92. I'm perfectly capable." "Mom." He held up his hand. "Let me finish, please." I closed my mouth, felt my jaw tighten. We need to be realistic. Jenny and I both work full-time. The kids have soccer, piano, tutoring. Claire's in Seattle with her own family. Daniel's in Texas. He looked down at his coffee. "We can't, Mom, you can't expect us to be your caretakers. That's not fair to put on us." The words hung in the air like smoke. The coffee cake timer went off, shrill and insistent, but neither of us moved. "I never asked you to," I said quietly. "I know, but eventually you will need help, and we need you to know now. We can't be the ones to provide it. We have our own lives, our own responsibilities. The kids need us." I stood up, mechanically removed the coffee cake from the oven, set it on the cooling rack. My hands were shaking. "Your father and I said, my back to him, we took care of both our parents. Your Grandma Rose lived with us for 3 years before she passed. We did it while raising 3 kids and working full-time. Your father was up at dawn every day, driving to his mother's house to help her before work. That was different." "How?" I turned to face him. "How was it different, Michael?" He looked uncomfortable. "That's just not how things work anymore, Mom. People live longer, healthcare is complicated. It's better for everyone if you're somewhere with professional care." "So you're telling me," I said slowly, "that when I'm old and sick and maybe scared, I'll be with strangers, not my son, not my grandchildren." "Don't make this into something it's not," Michael said, his voice sharpening. "We're trying to plan responsibly. We're trying to be honest instead of making promises we can't keep. Isn't that better?" I sat back down, stared at my coffee. "When did you decide this, you and Jenny?" "It's been an ongoing conversation. An ongoing conversation." I repeated the words, tasting their sterility, "about disposing of me. Mom, that's not fair, isn't it?" We sat in silence. Outside, I could hear my neighbor's dog barking, the distant sound of someone's leaf blower. Normal sounds, normal day. Everything changed. Michael left 20 minutes later, kissing my cheek at the door, taking a container of cookies for the kids, like it was just another visit, like he hadn't just told me I was on my own. I stood at the kitchen window and watched his truck disappear down the street. Then I did something I hadn't done since Tom died. I cried, big gulping sobs that shook my whole body. But here's the thing about being 72 years old: you've cried before, you've been disappointed before, and you've survived before. After I'd cried myself out, I washed my face, poured myself a fresh cup of coffee, and sat back down at that kitchen table. I pulled out the notepad I keep by the phone and started making a list, because if I was on my own, I was going to do it right. Over the next few weeks, I made some calls. I joined a gym, one of those silver sneakers programs, and started going 3 times a week. I took a cooking class at the community center, even though I've been cooking for 55 years, just to meet people. I said yes when my neighbor Dorothy invited me to her book club. I also called Claire in Seattle, told her what Michael had said. "Mom," she said, and I could hear the fury in her voice, "give me a week, I'm coming home." I also did something else, something I hadn't done in years. I pulled out my old sewing machine from the basement, cleaned it up, and started making quilts, not for myself, for the local women's shelter. Because here's what I realized, sitting in my too big house with my cold coffee and my breaking heart: if my son couldn't see my value, I'd spend my remaining years making sure others did. 3 weeks after Michael's visit, my doorbell rang on a Sunday morning. I wasn't expecting anyone. It was Emma and Josh, Michael's kids, standing on my porch with their overnight bags. "Grandma!" Emma threw her arms around me. "Mom and Dad are fighting. Dad told us to come stay with you." Over their heads, I saw Michael's truck idling in the driveway. He gave me a small wave, an apologetic shrug. I ushered the kids inside, got them set up with hot chocolate and the last of the snickerdoodles. Then I stepped out onto the porch, pulling my cardigan tight against the cold. Michael rolled down his window. "Mom, I'm sorry. Jenny's mother had a fall. We need to drive to Connecticut. Might be gone overnight. I know you said you didn't want to be expected to." "Bring them in," I said. "It's cold. The bags are—" "Michael, bring them in. We'll talk later." He nodded, looking relieved, guilty, grateful all at once. As I watched him drive away, I thought about family, about expectations, about the complicated mathematics of love and obligation and need, and I thought, this is tea over. Not by a long shot, but that's a story for another day. What Michael didn't know was what I'd found in my attic the week before, a box of letters that would change everything he thought he knew about our family. But I'll tell you about that next time.